You know, we need a critical conservative theory. So all the conservatives, here you go. Critical theory was, you know, the Marxist, rooted it very much in the Marxist ideology of oppressors and oppressed based on class. I was actually just reading some good old critical race theory to better understand what they're talking about. And Kimberly Crenshaw wrote that they coined the phrase critical race theory on purpose so that people understood it came from the Marxist framework of critical theory. But critical theory and Marxism didn't understand American racism. So they needed to take his philosophy of oppressed and oppressor and apply it to racial politics in the United States. So we'll do the same thing now, and we'll create critical political theory. And it states that if you are a liberal, you're an oppressor. And if you're a conservative, you're oppressed. There you go, guys. That one's free. Feel free to claim that you're now victims.
Yes.
There you go.
The problem is it won't work because the whole point of Marxism is to create struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it divides people into different groups, makes them struggle, and those groups divide up into more groups, and they fight, et cetera, intersectionality. I don't think it can be solved by people fighting each other.
Right.
People need to develop compassion. And because, you know, if anytime you're like arguing with people on the internet is a nightmare and no one should ever do it. I speak from experience.
Pretty much.
But when you're actually face to face with someone, it comes down to basically like, you know, if somebody feels like they're being attacked, even if you are completely wrong, if you feel like you're being attacked, you will either respond in three ways: fight, flight, or paralysis. And so if somebody feels like they're being attacked, that's what's going to happen. You have to make connections with people based on like our common humanity, because that is the antithesis of Marxism, that we have a shared common humanity. There are objective truths.
It seems like the philosophy of Marxism is just a tactic for destroying a system to steal power.
You know, I made the point the other day, like a lot of people say, oh, communism has never worked. That's not true. Communism has worked everywhere it's been tried, because the point of communism is to create death and destruction.
Pain is the point.
It's designed to destroy a society.
Yeah. They just pretend it's about helping you and making the world a better place, but it's actually about how can I empower myself? And I experienced this with Occupy Wall Street. The activists literally said, you know, they would say, we want to flip the pyramid over. Now, to the untrained, flipping the pyramid over implies the working class will now be on top and the capital will be forced to be on the bottom. What it really means, and this is what I asked, if you flip a pyramid over, the bricks crumble into a disheveled pile with only one of those bricks from the working class sitting on top. And they're like, and that'll be us.
And where will the Goa'uld live?
Yeah.
The Goa'uld in the bellies of the people they possess.
So this social justice stuff is very much a Trojan horse, which is probably something that you noticed, Yeonmi, when you were at Columbia, was that this guise of compassion and kindness. How did they couch it to you when you were first learning about social justice at your school? Did they present it as something highly positive, or did they force you to do this stuff?
It wasn't just, so I remember at the orientation, right? And then she was like, instructor came, so who likes like Jane Austen? I was like, yeah, me, right?
Right, yeah.
And because I didn't have love, I love like reading about love romance books. And then like, do you know this were colonial mindset, bigots, racist?
Wow.
So even when you think you don't know, you're just reading a classic, you're being subconsciously brainwashed by this white supremacist. So this is how you gotta be aware, how you can get brainwashed every day. I'm like, wow.
Did you speak up and say, hey, actually, I'm from North Korea? And
I did. So before the class, in the class, right, there's like a Western civilization, music, and art in Columbia you have to take in a core curriculum. And then professor's like, who has a problem studying Western civilization, like the music? And everybody like raising their hands. And they say, because of this white man killed our minority and silenced the women, we have to now study this Beethoven and Mozart's bigots.
Wow.
And I'm like, they were talented, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's just musicians. So like that critical race theory, every single thing they find a connection somehow. It's so smart. They're so creative to look at the problem that way, isn't it?
It's oppressed or oppressor. Mozart, oppressor.
Binary.
Yeah.
They're now saying Beethoven was black, though.
Was
No,
it?
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't. But they're actually now arguing that because of white supremacy, Beethoven couldn't actually be marketed as a black man, so they had to change his race. No joke.
Wow.
There was this big thing where they started claiming that a black man invented the light bulb, and that Thomas Edison, just took credit for it. Look, Thomas Edison was not a cool dude. Don't get me wrong. But I think the actual story was that a black man who worked for Thomas Edison developed a special filament.
Yeah.
But historical revisionism is very, very important, right? They need to get to the point where they can tell us that there is this individual who is God, and that you have to believe it or else. They need to get to the point where people can't defend themselves, will stop resisting, and will just give up. So every day that people challenge the system and say no is a bad day for this machine. But I also will say, at least for now, I don't think there is a grand architect or conspiracy or group that are trying to make it happen. I think you could argue there's a conspiracy in the sense that a bunch of people who have a worldview rooted in this don't realize they're destroying everything around them. Some people for sure know they're lying, cheating, and stealing, but it feels like dominoes falling over. Joe Biden doesn't seem to be all with it, but he hears a bunch of people saying critical race theory is good, and he goes, okay. Mark Milley, the general, he has no idea what he's talking about. He goes, I just want to understand white rage. And it's like, bro, that's insane. You're believing garbage. More and more people believe it. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I think this is where the beautiful language stuff comes in, because if people call people useful idiots, kind of, but it's kind of more like most of them are well-meaning innocents. I've heard that term where like really they're just, they want to be better people, like you were saying, Chris, and they want to, but like the beautiful language really just, it kind of pulls the wool over the eyes of a lot of people, and it's on purpose. You see this in every communist society where, in China, they just came out with a white paper, the Communist Party, about how the Communist Party in China has led human rights for 100 years. They've been the leader of human rights. Because we've, like this is the time where like they killed 80 million people. But they're like, we've definitely, they redefine human rights. They say, we talk about the universality of human rights within the context of each country. So they're already saying human rights are universal, but we're going to change what this means, human rights. And then they go, we believe that human rights are subsistence, development, and contentment. And therefore, these are like the metrics that we're using to say that we've lifted so many million people out of poverty. We are the leader in human rights. But it's even absurd, even if you use that standard, because they killed and starved and like 80 million people. Yeah. So, but like they're able to kind of take this term that sounds great, human rights, that everybody's like, these are universal. The UN says human rights are universal. And then they kind of can come and like twist that to mean something else and then make themselves look good.
That is so interesting to me that they call it the beautiful language, because this is exactly what they're doing in the US. They're changing these terms, and this is why I brought up the topic of definitions yesterday. When you're going into a debate, you lay out your definitions before you even get started. Nothing proceeds until you know exactly where everyone stands and where everything is lined up. And this is why they won't define. This is why postmodernism is so dangerous. It's because they defy definition. It's one of their stronger points. It's basically what makes postmodernism what it is. It gives them this ability to kind of change the way you perceive the world. And when you're arguing with them, oh, well, I didn't mean that. That doesn't mean that anymore. That used to mean that. It's evolved.
Critical race theory.
Yes.
Christopher Rufo goes on Joy Reid's show on MSNBC and says critical race theory is rooted in Marxism, and she goes, no, it isn't. And he's like, intersectionality is rooted in critical race theory. No, it's not. This author's a critical race theorist. No, she isn't.
Of course not.
And everything he said was true and verifiable, but they changed the definitions. She goes, Robin DiAngelo isn't a critical race theorist. She's a critical white studies author. Of course, critical white studies is a component of critical race theory. They just try and make it as confusing as possible so you can never criticize them. It's all semantics.
I mean, it is like Orwell wrote in 1984. It's like you lose a language to describe objective reality, and it drives you crazy.
Right.
And that's really destructive.
And, I think this is when I'm shocked something. I think this is defectors in the beginning having a hard time. Because in North Korea, words like it doesn't mean anything. I mean, like, right? Like
wokeism, you said.
No, words. Like words mean nothing. It's in TV, like say, oh, may we live in the socialist paradise, blah blah. I mean, there's never a bad news, right? So everything that you study in school is not really relevant to your actual life. When I came here, I was so shocked how seriously the words meant to people. And I don't know, it's so insane. I don't know how they did that in North Korea.
I mean, it's kind of the way that a communist regime like destroys society in a certain sense, because you destroy the meaning of language. So like everybody's a liar.
Yeah.
You have to be a liar all the time for your survival. And then there's nothing, right?
Well, you made a Stargate reference earlier.
Yes, I did.
SG-1 though. Well, I guess so. In the movie, they go to this other planet through the Stargate portal, and when they try and write on the ground, the slaves there freak out, like, writing is forbidden, what are you doing? And they're like, we're trying to convey an idea to you through, and it's like, you can't do that. And it's because when people have the ability to communicate, they become dangerous. They share ideas, they become more knowledgeable, they start to understand. The collective computational power of a large group of people is a lot. So to keep people oppressed, you must limit their ability to understand reality and share those ideas.
Well, this is why I think the United States of America has always been the greatest enemy to communism. You know, it states, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that there is this, they called it like nature or the creator that gives people inalienable rights. This is different from most other countries, that you don't have freedom of speech or freedom of religion because the government grants you that. You have it because you're human. You have this because something beyond human understanding has made it an innate part of your existence. And that creates an objective reality that is the opposite of communism, like Shelley was talking about with human rights in China. What they're saying is, we have our definition of human rights, you have your definitions of human rights, don't enforce your values, don't push your values on us. And then you get lost in like all these word games, but if you just zoom out, and like what the Chinese Communist Party is doing to the Uyghurs is evil.
Right.
What it's doing to Falun Gong is evil. What it's doing to all the Chinese people is evil. That is objective truth.
The one thing that greatly benefits China in the international conflict, where we're trying to convince people who's right and who's wrong, is the narrative of Black Lives Matter in the United States about some grand institutionalized racism where they come out and say, look what you're doing to these minorities, and it's all exaggerated or extreme, or at the very least they hyper-focus on some stories that make it seem like the whole of the country is racist or broken.
I mean, that's what Chinese propaganda has been doing about the U.S. for years. Every day there's a 30-minute Chinese news show that plays on every channel, right? And like, it's always, whenever they talk about America, it's always about how dangerous and violent and racist and whatever, how bad it is. And so this stuff about critical race theory is kind of just like, it's exactly the same thing, and they're so happy. The Chinese Communist Party like loves this. They use it all the time. Like, they can just say, oh, well, you can't criticize us for Wuhan, the lab leak or the coronavirus. I mean, they won't admit it's a lab leak, but you say that, it's racist. There was an incident that happened in the UN last week where Canada was about to bring up that there should be an investigation into the Uyghur genocide. And the Chinese representative stood up and was like, preemptively said, actually, there needs to be an investigation to Canada for what happened to the indigenous children. Like he just like right before the Canadian official was going to say something, just came up in a classic Communist Party move. Yeah. So yeah, they love this.
You know, it's funny. There's this. It's like a joke idea. What if we are actually in North Korea? Not like literally the physical space. Like, what if people in America are the ones who think they're so smart and think they know the world, but it's all propaganda, it's all manipulation, it's all controlled. And then actually in these other countries, they have spaceships and they have, 100 years more advanced technology. The idea is that for a lot of people, you just believe what the TV tells you. You just believe the newspapers tell you. I suppose the difference is in the United States, we have these kinds of conversations that challenge our own understanding of the world.
We also have freedom of movement, so we can go to these other countries or meet people in these countries.
You can't, though. You can go to a lot of countries, but there are some countries you can't go to. American passport will not get you in.
Like in North
It's
Korea.
true. That's true. I have to take your word for it, and you might be CIA.
Yeah.
See? That proves it.
I know.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's true.
But there are a lot of countries you can't get into. No, I think it's a funny idea, but the fact that you can even mention this idea that our government does lie to us. Of course they lie to us. There's classified information. They have to lie in some circumstances, but they lie when they shouldn't, and there's a lot of people who are corrupt. But then our media lies to us all the time as well. I do think it's funny when we talk about the things China is doing. And, you mentioned that China's got this program where they say all these things about the United States. We got the same thing, sort of, right? We've got these corporate American deep state whatever media that just say whatever the establishment wants them to say. Granted, we also have the internet with some free speech still available to the rest of us, but more so than many of these other countries.
I mean, the great thing for China is that the American corporate media is saying the same thing as the Chinese propaganda is.
Exactly.
Especially during the entire coronavirus.
Yeah, that's nice.
The solid they did for China.
Oh, yeah.
And YouTube saying you can't speak out against the World Health Organization. What they say is law. Don't say anything that contradicts them.
Well, even worse, this is something we covered recently. Like a lot of these medical journals early on that were saying, it's lab leak hypothesis, complete conspiracy theory. Not only were they quoting scientists like Dr. Peter Daszak, who was working with the Wuhan Institute of Virology,
Right.
China is giving money to some of the biggest medical journals in the world, Lancet and Springer Nature, right?
Yeah, Springer Nature and Elsevier, which is the parent company of Lancet. They get a lot of money from China to publish open access journals. Wow. So somebody estimated that Springer Nature's deal with China is worth like $10 million a year.
Wow.
You want to know? I think it's much worse than anybody realizes. Let me explain to you guys how easy it is to control the American narrative, especially with something like YouTube. YouTube is one of the greatest vehicles for political propaganda ever created. Let's say you're China. You want the American public to believe your lies and your propaganda. It's simple. Take a large portion of your money and then buy ads on the YouTube channels that say the things that you like. It's that simple. What ends up happening is YouTube sees that, advertisers really love these particular YouTubers. They generate a ton of ad revenue, prop them up, boost them in the algorithm. They get prominent positioning. They get more and more views. They become wealthy and successful. They hire people and expand their companies. It's that simple. There's no way to track it unless Google was audited and forced to reveal where the money is coming through. But this works in any capacity. Any individual can run any video as an ad, and anybody can buy an advertisement and choose to run it on a specific channel. So if you find somebody who's producing a show called like China, a YouTube channel called Why China Is Right. And every day they do an hour video where as an American, they're like, this is lies and propaganda. China is great. Some political actor might not be able to physically fund that without an ad appearing. YouTube will say, this is a Chinese sponsored. But the Chinese government can put money into a company, which then advertises sneakers. And they say, we want to run all of these ads for sneakers on this channel.
On this China is Right.
On this China is Right channel.
And do you think this China is Right channel would make a lot of money?
I would say so.
It makes a lot of money because they're giving the money to the creator and to Google. Google doesn't
take
care.
Notes.
Well, so think about it, right? If you guys have a YouTube channel, the U.S. government could be secretly putting money into Google, and you would never know. As an individual, you would not know. Because Google just says, hey, here's how much money you made in ads, and you have no idea where the ads came from or what the ads are for. I have people, they mention to me like, I got a Bloomberg ad on your video once. This is back during the election or whatever, primaries. And I'm like, good, I rag on the guy all the time. So if he's paying me to rag on him, it's understandable that he wants to try and counter that narrative, but I don't think you guys buy it, right? I think my audience is smart enough to realize the dude's full of it and he's buying political ads, and I'll take his money. But what if it's more insidious than that? What if it's a company for air conditioners? Every ad spot that you have, so there's ad inventory. Your video could be a certain amount of minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, and a YouTube ad can appear every certain amount of minutes. And algorithmically, they restrict how many ads can appear. Not every video sells every possible ad space. But what if you were China? You saw a YouTuber who was constantly saying things good about you. You could indirectly make sure every single available ad on that channel was paid for, and that YouTuber is now making tons of money, successful, and driven to produce more of the content they're doing because it works.
China's doing it simpler. They're just directly paying some YouTubers,
Yeah.
and I don't think those YouTubers have like a state-sponsored.
No,
Right.
there are a
Right.
bunch of like white pro-China YouTubers suddenly
Yeah.
who are going to Xinjiang and walking around saying there's no genocide here.
Wow.
Look at
Yeah.
this cotton field. Where's the genocide?
There was this really creepy moment where China was asking people to upload a video to their YouTube channels, where it was a guy complaining about a Falun Gong show in New York City. They were like, I think it was Falun Gong. I'm not sure. It was some like theater show. And he was like, this is wrong and creepy. Why is this religious organization being allowed to put on this show? And you'd get an email and they were like, we'll give you $200 to upload this to your channel right now. And
Oh yeah, I heard about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super weird.
yeah, I think it's against the rules, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Do you guys feel like this is capitalism defeating itself? Like the fact that people are being able to monetize this money that's available to weaponize information against the way that the West has become powerful? That's kind of what I've been thinking.
This might be kind of a tangential answer to that question, but I think, like, I don't believe in capitalism. I think that's a Marxist kind of construct to
That's
it,
true.
a
Yeah.
binary. You have communism or you have capitalism, and that's not really true. It's like you have freedom to engage in the economy. It's not capitalism. It's freedom.
Yeah, capitalism existed as like the normal human mode of trade and economics, and then Marx kind of gave a name to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
While
It was
also
just
ignoring-
enterprise.
Yeah, and while also ignoring that, there were other systems like mercantilism or subsistence farming. It just blames all the problems in history on
Of course,
capitalism.
yes.
That guy was nuts.
What
He
a crazy
was.
dude. I hear he smelled bad too.
I heard he was
Yeah,
racist.
probably. Gross.
He should be
was.
canceled for his racism.
He actually was kind of racist, right?
Totally was, yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.